gonna do a re-recording of Sunday's part 1 Unreal Engine. We started the stream by opening a kit called Beast Hub to obtain our T-Pose and GLB file. So you can simply just left click and download both of those. Once you have downloaded both of the Blender file and the GLB file, what you want to do is open Blender up and import them into Blender. So you would hit File, Import GLB. You would go into the folder where you have your GLB file saved, and you would import it right into Blender. Alright, once you have your asset loaded in Blender, simply zoom in, left click on the ice just to check if you have the material properties. If you have this window, the one I have right now, it means you do not have the material properties. So what you want to do is simply hit new, and it's all good. You added it into the textures. What you want to do afterwards is highlight your model, Control A, and Geometry to Mesh. Afterwards, you want to hold Shift and click anywhere in the model so you can see two different highlights, an orange and a yellow. And afterwards, Control J. Once you have done that, Control A again, Alt Transforms, and then Alt P to unpair everything. Clear and keep transformations. As you can see, we have everything selected, every texture, all the colors, and all the presets. And we only have one file selected. What we want to do right now is go to File, Export, FBX. You'll see this Blender file view window will pop open. The left side, you can check where you want it to go. So downloads 8336 FBX. On the right side, you have your operator presets, and this is very important. You want to go to path mode. Make sure that you have copy. You want to turn on embedded textures on. You want to include selected objects. Object type is mesh, and you want to turn off bake animation. And then simply hit export FBX. It will be the same process and steps for the T-pose. You will just have to check if you have the materials for the ice, add them, and then simply highlight the model, geometry to mesh, make sure everything is one, unpair it, transform it, and export it. Same process. So simply turn off Blender. You should see the the file that you saved should be here. So I did a few, but they're all the same folder. You can just right click on it, properties. You can just confirm that everything is well and it's saved in FBX format. So once you have that, you're ready to kind of like open Unreal Engine. It's very important before reopening Unreal Engine that all the files that we're about to use, either it's the model, the animation, the rig, or the environment, is within an FBX format. That's because a lot of the pre-made assets, a lot of the tools and animation that is used within Unreal Engine, or that you will be using in Unreal Engine, use this FBX, and it's the most convenient file format. Adding a different file format when the project is based on FBX could result in a project crash, so it's very important to make sure that before you're loading anything in, that you double checked all your assets to be FBX. It's also important that when you go to Miximo, anything you download and upload will also come out in FBX format, already ready to be used in Unreal Engine. So that's a nice way to just upload your T-pose, make sure the skeleton is right, and then select any pose you want, download it, and then import it directly into Unreal Engine. So I'm going to close this off. And you can open your Unreal Engine client so we can kind of get started with the lesson. You'll see all your pre-made templates and assets, and what this means is just if you have any idea on what type of project you want to build or what you want to dive into, either it being virtual reality, third-person shooter, or first-person shooter, or just a first-person game, a third-person game, or a blank project, anything from film, video, live events, architecture, automotive, or simulation, you can kind of click, select which project you want, which template, and load that very blueprint into Unreal Engine and kind of start building with kind of like a halfway down asset. But if you just want to do blank, nothing too crazy, then you would just hit games, blank, pick what type of quality preset you want, add your maximum is scalable, and this really just depends on what type of hardware you have and how strong your computer or laptop are. Usually if you just want to play around and test some things, you can just do scalable. If you're trying to build something and render something of high quality, I would recommend maximum. Then we just hit blink, you can pick the project location. So this would be where you want to save your project and access it from. Basically the name of the project and create. I provided some files. So launching my files, or if you created a blank project over here, it would be the same. So it would open something like this, and you would see each kind of like either one brick foundation or an iceberg foundation. That usually just depends on the asset and what type of grid it was used to build on. So what we want to do is hit the content folder. I have a few more folders as I was adding a few more things extra on, but what you want to do is simply go to subway train, double click it, maps, double click that, and then demonstration, double click that. And by doing so, you have launched the map. It will take you a few seconds to kind of load all the shaders and textures and material, but once that's done, you're kind of good to go and explore the map. So the basic movements to kind of move around the environment and asset is by holding right click on your mouse and using WASD keys to kind of move around to control your camera, your point of view, and kind of like your location around the map. And if you just hold right click, you can actually just change your point of view is grounded, but you can change 360 how you want to view your surrounding environment and access things like that. If you're noticing that the zoom in or the scrolling is too quick, even the camera speed itself is too quick, on the top right corner you have camera speed and scaling options. Just by clicking and adjusting the arrow, you will actually adjust how quickly you move and how smoothly you move depending. This is a really important tool just for the convenience, because let's say this map right here is very small, so you kind of want to move in a very generic speed. If the map was really large and massive, you want to move in a kind of like high speed so you can kind of get around the map really quickly and kind of see the whole environment as it is. So it's kind of convenience. The more you play around, the more cool things you will find. So on the map, you'll notice in any Unreal Engines, not even this custom map, but even if you did a training map or a blink map or a first person, third person, you'll notice a lot of UI that's popped up on the map or of any of the pre-made maps. Those assets are quite important. They're just not very important right now. But you can kind of click on them, like left click with your mouse, and you can adjust the position of the camera, the size of the camera, the lighting, and things like that, where the geometry and the lighting is being exposed within the atmosphere. So it's kind of all technical and very detail oriented. So it kind of just depends on the type of exposure you want to add into your environment, and you can kind of control it and resize it depending on your creativity and what you're aiming for. To turn everything off is simply by hitting G, and then you have a clear point of view of your environment, and you can kind of just go around. If you're trying to edit something and you need it back on, simply hit G again, and you can click, edit, change any options you need, hit G again, and it's all good to go. So this is basically step one of how to launch Unreal Engine, make a map, and load your assets. So step two would be to make a folder within the content folder. So you will right click, new folder, or you have a few. So I would just open my kit called beast folder, and I would hit import. And here I would add the file that we just did. So it would be any of the FBX files. They're all the same. I did a few pre-recordings. And then you have this window, which will be an FBX import option. You don't really, nothing here is really interesting. So you can just hit import all. This is usually the universal settings to any FBX file you're importing. So nothing to be adjusted unless it's something specific you're looking for. Usually there's nothing that you would adjust unless it's something to do with like a cinematic shot where the properties and texture need to be adjusted with the lighting and geometry of the map. But for something as simple as this, it's not necessary. As you can see, we have preloaded all the material of the FBX file we had of our GLB, of our kit called beast that we made in Blender. And we can simply add it here. On the top right corner, right here in the middle, you have your select your objects, you have your translate objects, your rotational objects tool, and then your resizer. A lot of the presets are like in Blender, so simply there's hotkeys to access all, but you can also access it from the UI itself, and you can adjust and rotate the model depending on your preferences. It's nothing hard. It's quite simple to do, and you can move the model, resize it, and kind of play around. So step one, we converted our files from a GLB or a Blender blend into FBX. We opened our Unreal Engine, we loaded our map, and we imported everything in. And let's say we want to do a screenshot right now. What you can do is go to the show list perspective, the 3 arrows on the left. You can hit high resolution screenshot, which will open this properties window. You can kind of adjust the type of resolution you want and kind of multiply the amount of pixels within the image. So depending on how strong your computer is, specifically a graphics card, you can take a simple high resolution picture to the next level quite easily. It will open in your custom folder, usually be the last image saved within the sequence. You can see a very simple but high-res shot, nothing pixely or blurry, of the Unreal Engine environment that you did. So you don't really have to render. You can kind of pose, make a model, put all the models and textures that you want, and create a quite simple resolution image without rendering it. So that's quite nice, as it doesn't take as much strain on your computer. The second step would be to go back into your content folder, to right click, create a new folder, and maybe call it like shot folder. And then the same process, we would open it, and then we would right click again to add a sequence, a level sequence tool. And once you open the level sequence tool within your content browser, you can actually start rendering an image or rendering an animation specifically. So let's get started with create a new camera and set in current camera cut. So one click will open and kind of change your perspective, as you noticed. If you look at the bottom left corner right here, camera actor, if you left click again, we'll actually go back to your original point of view. And if you click on the camera again, it'll go back to the camera point of view. And all of this can be adjusted within the actual outline of the cameras you have pre-made in the location. Alright, so this is kind of the first shot, let's say, nothing too drastic. We'll keep it basic. On the right corner right here in our properties, we can change the film back to 16:19 DCLR. There's a lot of options that you can play around, but this kind of like zooms it out and gives it a nice perspective. We can scroll a little bit down to play around with the focus, to make it a little bit stronger, kind of max it out as much as we can. And then simply what you want to do afterwards is render this movie to a video or image frame sequence, which will pop this movie render queue. The first step would be to hit right here, unsaved configuration, which will open this window tab. On the exports, you want to turn off GPG, and you want to hit settings, and you want to put in a PNG sequence by 8-bit, and then simply hit accept. Open this again. And then the file output right here, you can actually change where you want this to go. So I'll keep it in downloads. You can actually change the resolution output, anything from a basic to a 4K or even higher. You can scroll down, and as you can see right here, we have a custom playback range. So this is kind of important. This, when you load anything on Unreal Engine, it automatically puts it at 150 frames. If you were trying to do an animation, then we would render all 150 frames, but we're not really doing an animation. So what we can do is hit 0 and hit 1, and it would basically render a frame that starts at 0 and the frame that ends at 1. So it would be 1 frame. And then you would hit accept, and then render local. The difference between render local and render remote, if this was a massive animation, and a massive animation, let's say, is like 30 seconds or a minute or anything longer, you would hit render remote, which will turn off Unreal Engine and put a lot of focus on rendering this file. But since we're just doing 1 frame, nothing is really necessary, so we can just hit render local, and you will have a preview pop up of the render image that you're rendering right now. That's basically it. So that was just 1 render image. The quality will differ. As you can see, because I maxed out the focus, it came out extremely blurry and very like jittery with the pixelation. So what we can do is go back to the camera and kind of play with the focus. And a lot of it will always have to be adjusted. Simply just how Unreal Engine is. It's an animation program, which is used to enhance animation kind of to the next level. So doing one specific render shot will always be kind of difficult, but doing an animation on the other hand will be way better. So if we just kind of outline, fix it a little bit, and follow the same steps again to render, make sure everything is PNG sequence. Once you do it once, you don't have to follow those steps. Every time you do open Unreal Engine, you will have to follow the steps and to turn off GPG and turn on PNG. But make sure that like the custom set will all be reset all the time. So just make sure that you are paying attention to what you're rendering. So we adjusted the focus on this image. So it's a little bit different than the other image. I'm not sure if it's this image actually. I think it is. It's a little bit less blurry actually. It just resaved it. So the more you play with the focus and the camera angle, the different points of view you can see, and you can refocus it to kind of like do a more clear shot. As this wasn't really much of a clear shot, but that's also because a lot of the lights and settings need to be adjusted to create a very nice cinematic shot. And when you're not trying to do something so cinematic, this one is the high-res resolution. Photo comes in handy because you can do the same high-res without doing a complicated cinematic shot. So let's turn our camera again, make sure we have everything set, and let's see we want to record something. So when you go to the bottom right here, camera actor, make sure it's turned on. Scroll a little bit to the bottom, and then right here add a key, which will be our key transform, which will start right here from the beginning of the animation. This is an indicator where the animation will start, or like the point of view of the camera will start. You want to hit play, kind of like let it run back, and kinda, you know, exit out wherever you want and hit the transform key again right here. So you have one at the end, one at the beginning. And depending on how you're pausing the video, you can add various transform keys, and it will kind of allow you to do a very simple, nothing too crazy shot. Now, of course, this was very generic just because I'm trying to keep it as simple as possible. You can actually change the very locations of the cameras, the rotation and the scale, and all of that will adjust the very smoothness of the camera and everything else within it. So once you have this done, you're really ready to render the animation. So what you want to do is render this movie to video, same settings, but right here, since we're not rendering a custom image, you want to turn this off. Sometimes it's better just to make sure it says 0, 0. And kind of like, oh, another thing, since this is going to be rendering 150 images, make sure that it's actually not going to a specific random folder, but to an actual folder that you created right now, because there's going to be 150 frames going to that specific folder. Actually, the presets didn't actually save, so let me try this. Right now, yes. As you can see, the frame says 0 out of 150, and you can see the render preview is actually showcasing to you the animation. And you can see that the render preview is already on a way better quality than the render image, just because Unreal Engine is designed to enhance animation, not as much as to enhance a single frame. So what a lot of people do, they would create a high resolution photo, and then they would open Photoshop to kind of even enhance it to the next level. So that's kind of like one strategy to use Unreal Engine is as a tool. So now what you notice that we have all the frames, right? Which is not the ideal part, but this is everything that you kind of wanted to do is done. all you have to do right now is open Premiere Pro and kind of import this folder, a single image, and make sure that a single sequence image is turned on, and then you will import all 150 frames into a 6-second video, and you're good to go. I don't actually have Premiere Pro installed, but I think for the second lesson I will showcase a full tutorial on how to do it. But it's a very simple procedure where you simply hit File, you import the folder, you make sure that the sequence image is turned on, and this means that it will follow the same sequence of the images. So if you're selecting 01, then 02 until 0150, all the images will follow in that specific sequence, and then simply hit export into an MP4 file, and that should take you 30 seconds to do. And by doing that, you basically have all the knowledge you need to kind of download any asset, import and export any Blender file that you already worked on into Unreal Engine, enhance it, and do anything from a screenshot to a render to an animation, add any pose, any rig that you have in mind, and you kind of like start playing around with this and seeing what kind of animation and procedures you can do. Overall, I don't think this lesson is hard, or Unreal Engine is very hard, and I would encourage anyone to kind of like explore, play around, and see if you actually like it. And the possibilities are kind of endless, and if you're using Blender and Unreal Engine, the amount of creativity is also endless. Thank you.